Visitors, tourists, fun seekers, and believers. Before the climb begins, the dance begins. But beware, this is not a performance. It is a prelude. You will need that energy because Olumirin demands more than admiration. It demands your strength. The climb is not for the faint-hearted. The staircase, steep, sometimes incomplete, and dangerously narrow, wins its way up 7 levels. And yes, the heights can be dizzying. But for every drop of sweat, there's a moment of awe waiting above. Only a portion of the path is paved. Most of it remains rocky, slippery, and raw. A silent reminder that while nature gave us Olumirin, we have not fully embraced her yet. But still, the brave climbs. Some stop at level 3, others push to level 5. Only the determined reach all 7. Along the way, you'll find the spring clear, cold, alive. Locals believe in its healing powers, but who are we to argue? Here, belief runs as freely as the water itself. This story begins in 1140 AD when a hunter named Akponju Abela, an orderly to one of Oduduwa's sons, stumbled upon this wonder. They say when he saw the waterfalls, he cried out, "Olumirin!" meaning here is a new god. And from that exclamation, Olumirin was named. A sacred moment, a sacred place. In 1957, a pipe-borne system was built to bring this water to the people. However, today, it lies abandoned, swallowed by time, rusted by neglect. You see the ruins of old dreams, roofless halls and forgotten structures, echoes of the Obafemi Awolowo era, each one a symbol of potential. Recently, the incumbent governor of Osun State, His Excellency Senator Nuruddin Jackson Adeleke, visited Olumirin. Standing before the roaring tears, he promised to restore the glory of this natural heritage. A new hope, one that seeks to breathe life into these sacred rocks and echoing waters once again. Yet, even in its raw form, Olumirin enchants. Tourists climb, children laugh. Believers pray, lovers pause. At each tier, water tumbles with grace, mist floats in prayer, and hearts find peace. From the top, the view is divine. Below you, 7 levels of magic. Behind you, a journey through faith, strength, and history. Olumirin is more than a waterfall. It is a monument of nature, a heritage of Osun State, a national treasure waiting to be fully revealed. This is Olumirin. This is Osun tourism.
Thank you for staying with us. This is still Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. Education plays a pivotal role in a nation's development. Recently, the Kwakwara Simons University rating for 2026 was released, and none of Nigeria's 297 universities made it to the top 1,000. Yes, you heard me. No Nigerian university made it to the top 1,000. Not even the great Obafemi Awolowo University, known as the Great Ife, made it to the top 1,500. It was as bad as that. We'll take a closer look at the ratings and see how we can move forward from there. Okay, right there on the screen, you can see the top 10 universities from that rating right there. Talking about the QS ratings release. At number one spot, we have MIT. That's the Massachusetts Institute of Technology of the USA. At number 2, we have the Imperial College London, UK. And number 3, we have Stanford University, USA. Number 4, we have University of Oxford, the UK. Then we have Harvard University, the USA. Then at number 6, we have University of Cambridge, the UK. Number 7, we have ETH Zurich, Switzerland. Then number 8, quite interesting, we have National University of Singapore. That's Singapore, of course. Then number 9, we have University College London, UCL, UK. Then finally, number 10, we have California Institute of Technology, the USA. So in this rating, the QS put together about 1,501 universities for this particular rating, and no Nigerian university made it to the top 1,000. Quite unfortunate. In total, we had about 20 Egyptian universities, 11 South African universities, and of course 4 Tunisian universities. For South Africa, for instance, South Africa had 2 universities in the top 300. The University of Cape Town was rated 150. Then the University of Witwatersrand was rated 291. Talking about the top 1,000 now. Interestingly, no Nigerian university made it to the top 1,000 for the 3rd consecutive year. However, 3 Nigerian universities made it to the top 1,500, talking about the University of Ibadan, the University of Lagos, and of course, Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, making it to the top 1,500. But if you talk about the top 1,000, no Nigerian university was there. How did we get here as a people? We've had so many challenges in the nation that led to this. Of course, we'll still talk about budgetary allocations, when as a nation we are still struggling with 5 to 7% being allocated to education. Those are one of the reasons. And of course, we look at some of the metrics used by the QS for this rating. QS evaluates universities using 8 key performance indicators. So we look at the 8 key KPIs being used by QS to arrive at their outcomes. For instance, we have academic reputation, 30%. We have employer reputation, 15%. Faculty/student ratio, 10%. We have citations per faculty, 20%. We have international faculty ratio, 5.0%. Then we have international student ratio, 5.0%. We also have international research network, 5.0%. Then we also have employment outcomes, 5.0%. And finally, we have sustainability, 5.0%. So these are the KPIs, the key performance indicators, the parameters used to rate these universities. If you look at the top 10 universities, quite striking for me is the fact that we have at number 8 there, number 8, the National University of Singapore. You know, before we make comparisons, people will say, let us compare apple to apple. You shouldn't, some critics will say, why should you compare Nigeria to the US or the UK? But look at number 8 position, the National University of Singapore. Singapore is a nation that got their independence in 1965. August 9, 1965 to be precise. They separated from Malaysia and became an independent nation. Nigeria got independence in 1960. In fact, as at 1960, Singapore was worse than Nigeria. But look at how far they've gone. Having a university in the top 10, the National University of Singapore, rated number 8. And here we are, giant of Africa, without a single university in the top 1,000. Joining us on the conversation this morning is Mr. Jacob Sule. Of course, he's the director. Mr. Jacob Sule is a team lead for iRead to Live initiative, and is also a legal practitioner. Thank you for joining us on the show this morning, Mr. Jacob Sule.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Good morning.
It's a pleasure having you.
Absolutely.
Talking about the education sector in Nigeria, you've seen it yourself, the QS ratings released. No Nigerian university making it to the top 1,000. And I just cited the example of a nation like Singapore, having a university in the top 10, National University of Singapore at number 8. Mr. Sule, how did we get here as a nation?
That's a question I don't have answers to on how we got here. But I think this conversation is actually long overdue. We cannot underestimate the fact that Nigerian universities have its own challenges. But nevertheless, I think we have a lot of work to do. I'm a product of the Nigerian universities, having gone through 3 or 4 universities in Nigeria and earned degrees. I can tell you that We are not doing bad as a nation to meet our local demands, but I also agree that there's a lot more we can do to become globally competitive so that we can also stretch our feathers and be ranked alongside other universities that are doing well around the world. So the question about how did we get here, I think it's as a result of continuous decay and lack of political will on the part of our political leaders. Our universities are not properly funded. Universities are riddled with strike actions, poor infrastructures, and we're not just a nation that wants to pay deliberate attention to education. And I think until we begin to redirect our focus and have political will, we will continue to struggle with this kind of ratings that places Nigerian universities at a very low rank alongside other global universities around the world.
So much to really ponder on that most times we reckon ourselves as, Nigeria now, as the giant of Africa in most things, especially on the continent. You will see, maybe even on the continent, we're not really there in most spheres, including education, because we have seen situations when, of course, from time immemorial, people have a right to travel, to seek knowledge, to do business, to do many things. But the situation in which you see people students leaving Nigeria, Nigerian universities for Kenya universities in Ghana here, respectfully speaking, even in Nigeria, these are some of the things we are seeing, because not because we don't have quality teachers, maybe they are fast moving out, but then some will say is that uncertainty, especially when you are not attending private universities, the recognized ones. When in public universities, anything can happen. You only know the day of matriculation. You can never tell the day of your convocation, which might take extra years, and you lose out, in terms of years with your colleagues of the same, set. These are some of the issues as well. And now, another concern that has been raised sometimes is, when you look at the rating, some would tell you it depends on who is rating. A particular platform might rate these schools, or some other platforms, there's the Times Higher Education, who many people believe as well that they are an authority when it comes to rating. But anybody that is rating now, they're not being found. Again, universities are not being found in the first 10, first 100, talking about the first 1,000 right now. Many persons will say that's not far-fetched. You can easily know that. But the issues here is the fact that Nigerian graduates like yourself, they go out of this country and they do great things. I usually mention a case of a particular story I said in which it has lived for me and possibly will live for me for years, that at a particular shift in a very big hospital in the US, I think it was in the US, on a night shift in that particular hospital, they just discovered that everybody on that shift were Nigerians. And it's not because they picked that shift, it just happened. And everybody was looking at themselves like almost 10, 15 of them were Nigerians. And I said to myself, these are people that possibly, if things were right, they will have been at UCH, they will have been at OAUTH, they will have been at Uni Osun Teaching Hospital, they might have been at ABU Zaria or Unizik Hospital, now in a particular place, and all of them running a shift as Nigerians. So it's not the death of having brilliant students, but the reason why this has been is what we are talking about today here. And we learned there is the global ranking thing, impact ranking. Then there is global ranking. So how do you think they arrive, the metrics that are used, as far as you are concerned, you have somebody big on education, how these rankings are done? If you can let us into that.
Thank you, Femi. I think we need to set, just like you have started in the studio right there, we need to set the base for this conversation so people would understand why the rankings are necessary and the bodies are responsible for doing this ranking. And so that we don't just have a loose conversation.
Right.
There is a body responsible for ranking universities in Nigeria. That's called the National Universities Commission. The body has also ranked a couple of universities in Nigeria, and I think by my last count, we have about 292 or 297 universities in Nigeria. And the last ranking that was done by NUC, I think, was around the year 2015. Prior to that, the previous one was done the year 2011. And if you look at the rankings of these universities done by Nigeria, there were certain metrics used by the National Universities Commission to rank our local universities in Nigeria. Some of those rankings included the teaching quality of both private, federal, and state universities. They also looked at the research output, infrastructure, international outlook, the employer representation, and then the web impact of this university. When I mean web impact, how much impact can you see from graduates of these universities, faculty, professors, as regards their research and all of that. Now, if you move to the Times Higher Education, they also have their own metrics in which they use in ranking universities. And one of the things that are critical about them is they are much more concerned about the teaching quality. They don't look at the infrastructures in which, unlike what we use in Nigeria, but they pay much attention to the research outputs. How many professors have been cited? Where have you published? Have you published in high impact journal, the Scopus of this world, and all those critical journals? They also look at the international outlook and also how employable are the graduates of those institutions. Same with the QS record. Over the years, this ranking have not been an absolute reflection of what you have in the Nigerian educational system. For instance, if you look at the NUC ranking in the year from 2003 to 2015, NUC had focused their ranking on a couple of things. They've looked at the accreditation of the schools, the facilities, and the governance of those schools. They've also looked at the regulatory compliance of those schools, the ratio of professors, faculty, teachers, all of that, libraries. And also, if you look at this whole statistic holistically, a handful of Nigerian universities have continually remained at the top rank when NUC does this ranking. And those universities are the things in which everybody knows, the universities of Ibadan of this world, the Unilag, Uniben, OAU, and University of Ilorin. But when you come to the Times Higher Education, that is much more a global standardized platform, we have also seen how they have paid attention to the rankings of universities. In 2023, 12 Nigerian universities participated in this ranking. And when I say participated, there is no fee for you to participate in this ranking. You just have to fill in some forms, but the requirement is that you must have published at least 1,000 scholarly articles within the year. And this is not just one individual, maybe the entire faculty or the entire university must have done this publishing. Out of those 12 universities that were ranked in 2023, we saw that just a few of Nigerian universities made it to that ranking. And this ranking included over 1,000 universities. But interestingly, the Nigerian universities that were ranked were being ranked as 1,000 and above. That is, they were not even between the first and 999 universities. They were ranked from 1,000 and above and below. Now we saw a shift in 2025 where 44 universities were also ranked. And out of those 44 universities, we saw more Nigerian universities participated in this ranking. And something interesting happened. Private university participated more, and we saw the likes of Covenant University, the likes of Afebola, and likes of Landmark University taking the lead in this ranking. Now the question is, what does this ranking have on the purpose of education in Nigeria? I am a big fan of putting Nigeria first. And I really do not want us to throw away the whole educational system of Nigeria because some persons have sat down in the comfort of their office, collected data, and ranked Nigerian universities based on the data that are applicable to them. When I started this conversation, I made it known that Nigerian universities have its own challenges. But regardless of those challenges, we are doing well locally. But the question is, or the charge is, we need to do much more better so that we can become globally recognized. Now, how can we do that? The charge is for I'll close on this thought. I think the charge is for NUC to make sure that universities are mandated to focus on quality assurance and improved research and teaching methods. If we get these two things right, that is quality assurance and then teaching and research, I can assure you that Nigerian universities would have the requirement to be able, and be properly ranked. And we need to ask questions. What are these private universities doing differently from our public universities? So these are questions in which we need to ask so that we can actually position Nigerian universities so that they can actually become globally ranked, and then we can see that, yes, indeed, our universities are not just local universities, they are indeed global champions.
All right, Mr. Sule. This conversation basically is about the global ranking, the global ratings. You mentioned the NUC rating, fine. And I really like us not to be sentimental about this. I'm a Nigerian. I can be I'm as Nigerian as it gets, a proud Nigerian for that matter. I know we have individual talents in Nigeria. We have geniuses in Nigeria. I've been privileged to study and work with geniuses who are Nigerians, who live in Nigeria. Some of them are lecturers now in Nigerian universities, so no doubt about that. We have the brains in Nigeria. But the fact remains that our institutions are weak. This is a global rating that considered about over 100 countries. So it has nothing to do with Nigeria. They are not being sentimental here. And I read out the parameters, the KPIs they used to judge. So they were quite fair, no sentiments here. So the fact remains, which is very clear, that Nigeria is nowhere to be found globally when it comes to universities rating. And let's take a closer look at some of these parameters again, just to make sure we are not playing politics with it. The parameters used by QS. For instance, let's look at the first one here. They talk about academic reputation. They give 30%. What's the reputation of our universities? Fine, we have professors who are doing well. But when they consider all that, we do not measure well when it comes, when we talk about the global, when it gets to the global scale here. Then again, we talked about employer reputation. Where are Nigerian graduates working? Interestingly, we have Nigerian graduates working in other countries doing well, but most times when they get there, they still get to study in those nations. So these are some of the factors we should take a critical look at. Then let's talk about faculty/student ratio. In a place like Harvard, they have over 11,000 professors. How many professors do we have in University of Lagos? How many do you have in University of Ibadan? So when you talk about faculty to student ratio, these are some of the things they consider as well. So these are facts, no sentiments here. Then again, another factor is international student ratio. Mr. Sule, you were on this show. There was a day we talked about education, and I raised that point again. International student and international faculty ratio. Do we have that in Nigeria? How many foreign lecturers do we have in Nigeria? How many white lecturers do we have? How many foreign lecturers from Europe, from America, from Asia do we have in Nigeria? How many foreign students do we have in Nigerian universities? So these are clear facts that cannot be disputed. So at the global scale, Nigeria is not doing well. And what should we do better as a nation? But here in Nigeria, Mr. Sule, you agree with me, every day universities are being churned out. Universities are popping up every day. It seems as though the government, instead of the government strengthening existing universities, they are busy bringing out new universities. We have 297 universities, and unfortunately, none of them can even get close to the top 1,000, just 3 in top 1,500. So don't you think, as a nation, we should be more concerned with quality and not quantity at this time?
Daniel, I agree with you with everything you said, and I do not have any reservations to the comment in which you made. I agree with you 100%. Yes, we have a lot to do with our Nigerian universities, but the reality is Nigerian universities are not lacking in intellectual capacity. We are doing so well with our research, but the challenge is that our academic footprint globally is very weak. And this is because Nigerian researchers, professors, PhD candidates are not publishing in high impact journals, or they are not actually indeed collaborating at the scale in which they need to collaborate to be able to show that Nigeria is on the footprint. I tell you for a fact, many of the Nigerian professors that you see, I have been taught by multiple and fantastic Nigerian professors. We don't have an intellectual challenge in Nigeria, like I said at first. The challenge is that we need to put ourselves out more there and publish more. Now, the second issue which you raised, which is also one of the criteria in which Times and QS use, is also about employability of our graduates and the employer's relation. Now, the challenge is this. Despite that Nigerian graduates are highly innovative and they are very adaptive, we are challenged with industry-focused curriculum that can actually prepare our graduates for life outside universities. I saw a tweet a couple of days ago where an organization in Abuja was saying that the CEO of the organization said he is being pushed to write a letter to the HOD of a department in a private university in Nigeria to query the quantity and the quality of Nigerian graduates or students that have been sent to their institutions for internship. And this is because when those students arrive in organizations, they cannot even approach the basic architecture process. Now, this questions the fact of what kind of curriculum are we running in our universities? If you have students that cannot do the basics while in college, what do you expect this student to do upon graduation? So I agree with you. And if you look at the NBS statistics, they've made several comments about the lack of skills and the need for us to bridge the gap with skills in our graduates. Most, and I said it with all sense of responsibility and care and caution, most Nigerian graduates are not employable. And it's because the curriculum is outdated. I'll give an example. Many years ago, I think it was about 2012, I was posted to a federal institution in the northern state to serve as a copper. When I arrived in that institution, I met the HOD of that institution and I introduced myself. The HOD said, okay, copper, would you like to work as a clerical officer? I was like, whatever you ask me to do, I would do. Eventually, when the man saw the way in which I was responding to him, he was very upset. He drove to the administrative building of the school, requested for my result and said, who is this young boy? Because then I was still very short, no beard, just looking very fresh from university. He was like, who is this boy you sent to my department? What does he know about this course I want to teach? When the dean came back, he was like, oh, I'm sorry, I never knew you had this background and all of that. Where am I going to? That was in the year 2012. The HOD then gave me a particular book, said, hey, copper, this is what you should use to prepare your lecture note and all of that. I looked at it. These were notes that were done with typewriting in 2012. I was like, sir, respectfully, I cannot use this material to teach my classes. I had to take the time to prepare my own slides, prepare my own handout, and then share with the students. I did this with caution, not disregarding himself as, he's been in the field as somebody who has knowledge. But what am I trying to say? The Nigerian curriculum is outdated, and there's a need to make sure that we re-engineer this curriculum to fit into what the labor market is demanding. Now, one other thing in which QS did was the faculty ratio. Daniel, you would agree with me that our universities are overcrowded. Take, for instance, some universities' lecture halls are built to take, let's say, a minimum of 500 students. When you go to these universities, you have about 2,000 students who are receiving lectures in those classrooms, poorly ventilated, no adequate infrastructures for them to sit, and then the learning environment is not even encouraging. So how do you expect students to even perform in that area? Based on that, the ranking are not favorable to Nigeria. The other thing in which QS looked at was faculty citation. Like I said initially, how many Nigerian researchers are being cited? And when you are not cited, how do you say that you are building scholars? And let me be very clear with you on this. I'm a big fan of Nigerian universities. I have gotten 3 solid degrees from Nigerian universities. And I would not say that Nigerian universities are not doing well, but there's a room for us to do better than where we are right now. And when I say these things, I say these things with all care and consideration. Until our professors, our universities, vice chancellors, our provosts in colleges, our deans of faculties, our head of research are paying attention to the footprints of our Nigerian universities, we will continue to be ranked poorly among all of this. Look at the Covenant universities of this world. Look at the Afro-Popular universities of this world. Look at the Osun State universities of this world, because that's my alma mater. We need to pay attention to how these universities are being run so that we can actually say that, yes, within a short timeline, this is what we've been able to do. Now, on the 5th point, which is on international faculty and students, you made a comment that we do not really have white people or foreigners coming to teach in our universities. Would you, as a foreigner, when you read stories about people being kidnapped in Nigeria, want to come to the country to offer your expertise? No. Until we have an holistic approach about the kind of country we want, we cannot attract foreign talents to come and study. But that doesn't take away the fact that we have a couple or a handful of foreigners who are teaching in some universities in Nigeria. There are, but there's a room for us to do more. Lastly, on this point, if you look at the QS ranking, you would see that even from the African countries that were ranked, we have universities like Egypt, we have universities like Ghana, we have universities, it is embarrassing for Nigeria that our universities are ranked below these countries. We call ourselves the giant of Africa. Are we just the giant of corruption and politicking? Or we're not just concerned about education? We talk a lot in that country. We talk a lot in Nigeria. We make headlines, we make press statements, but then when it's time for us to do the things that we need to fix our country, we don't do these things. Nigerians are struggling with education, and until we put our feet on the ground to fix this challenge, we will continually be ranked locally. Now, let me close on this. We can do well with our universities, but until we pay attention to our research feasibilities, those rankings will not improve. And for this research to be done, Nigerian universities must be funded judiciously.
Right. Thank you. Quite an elaborate one there. You mentioned many things: infrastructure, student to classroom ratio. When you talk about that, especially for many persons who attended public institutions, I'm sure these might send a very not too pleasant memory to many persons, especially when you attend some of those general classes and you see people hanging on to windows and chairs. And in fact, it's always a case of who gets there first. Yes, and people are just loitering around the place. And, unfortunately, sometimes there are no even public address system. So if you are lucky enough to hear, that's your problem. If you are not lucky enough, you are the ones who should do that. Now, so how do we move on from all of this? Now, we must start from the continent. And all of these, to even be a force on the continent. I'm appalled. I'm concerned. Many Nigerians are. When you hear Nigerian students being found in Sudan, in Chad, in Niger, in Togo, and these are some of the things. With due respect to those countries, but this is Nigeria, and we're identifying what the issues are right now. We need practical steps, holistic steps that need to be taken, policies that will help these current situations, situation in which we are, so that possibly in the next 2 years, when we're having this conversation, we'll have a different story to tell. All of those will be answered after now. Stay with us. All right, thank you for staying with us. And we're talking about public, in fact, it's about education this morning, but most especially about the global ranking released recently. And very disturbing is the fact that out of the first 1,000 universities in the world, Nigerian universities are not recognized, listed in that. And it's a cause for concern. We're looking inwards. How can we do better? What are the issues? And we have with us the executive director at iRead Believe Initiative. Jacob Sule is with us, and he has been speaking on the issue. Thank you for staying with us, Jacob. Now, moving on, you have identified what the issues are. Now, we know the politicking in Nigeria. The priority, Daniel talked about how we are still grappling with should it be 5% of the budget? Should it be 7%? Even though that 7%, do you have the release of the entire 100% of the 7% when it comes to funding released to these universities as and when due? Some are saying we should have a quality, operation of these universities. Instead, we are still having much more coming into the space. So what should we do, to even know that, yes, any Nigerian, and you mentioned something earlier, that some, I would like to say maybe some Nigerian graduates are not employable, because they are not skill-based. Most are certificate-based and oriented. So what should we do so that we have quality graduates here, much more quality graduate? You said it, you're a product of Nigerian University, State University at that, and you're doing well where you are. So what should we do, ma, so that we are good in Nigeria, we are great on the continent, and then we can rub shoulders globally? That's in the next 4 years, so to say.
Let me thank you. First, I will start by saying charity, they say, begin at home. If we're not doing well locally, I don't think we have any business being concerned about the global ranking. That's not to say that...
Jacob, can you please raise the voice a bit? All right. Yeah, we'll try and reconnect with Jacob Sule because, yes, many persons know what the issues are. Jacob, are you with me?
Yes. Femi, can you hear me?
All right, please go ahead.
Yeah, I said ranking globally shouldn't only be our focus in Nigeria. Charity, they say, begin at home.
Right.
And we must also be concerned about what is the local perception. When I mean local, what is the Nigerian perception about our universities? We've talked so much about the problems, what the problems are, but now I want to focus on what do we think we can do. And I'll categorize this into 3 focus. One, on the part of the government, on the part of the universities, and how employers can support Nigerian universities to become like the hub for innovation and research. The first thing first is that, one, the government is the biggest spender. They own the universities, the bank, the schools, the churches, and everywhere in which we all go to as citizens or residents of those countries. My charge is to the government to invest in infrastructure. A university system without proper infrastructure cannot produce quality research. And when I say invest in infrastructure, I'm not saying just go and commission some buildings and those buildings are left for 20 years without being completed, or ETFs projects that are not being funded. Government should be deliberate. Let there be a political will to lead our universities. Secondly, government should help to stabilize the academic calendar of all universities, or let me say all tertiary institutions in Nigeria, and that's state university, private universities, state university, or federal universities. There must be stabilization in our academic calendars, because if these calendars are not stabilized, we're going to keep having back and forth with when students are graduating, ASU strike today, NASU tomorrow. We need to deal away with all of that in the year 2025. Government should please fund academic research. If these foundations are not put in place, we cannot achieve anything as a nation. And I care deeply about this cause. And that's why I'm saying all of this, so that whoever is in government that is listening will be able to take the key points away from this. The second thing in which we need to do is we need to invest in research and innovation. Femi and Daniel, the universities, the MITs of this world, the Harvard of this world, the National University of Singapore of this world, it's not because they have some buildings built by politicians, or they have the coat of arms of Nigeria, or they have the best greenery. No, it's because they have invested in quality research and innovation. So Nigerian universities must begin to spend a lot of their funding on this issue. The second thing is that we must strengthen our academic staff capacity. I can say for a fact that we have so many PhD holders in Nigeria. The last time I checked, I think it was about 2021, we have about 6,000 professors across all fields in Nigeria. And I asked myself, I actually made a tweet sometimes ago. I said, with all this research that we've written, all this thesis in which all of us who have done PhDs have written, can't we just have one to look at and say, this is what we want to use to change the fortune and destiny of Nigeria? Where are we putting all of this research? And it may interest you to know that nowadays, project, thesis, final year papers, after the student does the defense and graduates, buys the copy and leave, the next semester, you are finding this research being used to sell roasted corn, roasted plantain down the road. We cannot build a university or a nation like that when these researches are not being put into practice. The other thing is we need to invest in our digital visibility. How do you invest in this? Those ICT labs should not just be for cheap political points. They should help us build spaces where there can be innovation. And I'm proud of what the current minister is doing, Dr. Bosun Tijani. I saw over the news yesterday where he was in Kano to commission the NCC building that was unfortunately destroyed, I think, early last year. We need infrastructure like that in Nigeria to help research, to help with tech, to help with digital visibility around our universities. One other thing we also need to do is we need to also find a way to internationalize our campuses. What do I mean by that? We have professors who have never gone on sabbatical leaves in Nigeria. They have never left the shores of Nigeria for anything research. Universities need to begin to encourage our professors to go on sabbatical leave, go to countries abroad, go and explore what is being done in those countries, so that when you come back to Nigeria, you can see how you can improve learning and how lectures are being conducted. You don't have to come to the US. You can go to Europe. You can go to even some African countries, or even just go there and let Nigerian also encourage the issue of exchange programs. Exchange programs in the sense that Nigerian scholars or researchers can go abroad, go study, and Nigeria can also invite scholars abroad to come to Nigerian universities, explore our resources, and with that, I think we can build a very solid university system. And lastly, we need to align governance with innovation. Enough of these old ways of doing things. When students want to do clearance, you have to go queue. And this makes me proud of, and I'll give one very good example. During my time at the Nigerian Law School, some of us had to go through manual clearance. We traveled from different places of residence. Unfortunately, some of our colleagues passed away during that process. When I saw that the Nigerian Law School for this current set actually introduced online verification and clearance process, that made me very happy. That's a step in the right direction. So if our universities can begin to incorporate these innovations into how universities are being run, I think we will go a very long way. Now for universities, universities must build partnerships. When building partnerships, I think it will help us. And lastly, for employers should also try as much as possible to create a friendly environment where students can come in for internship, CWS programs. I think if we put all of this together, we won't be in the way of making our university solid, and we can also now start thinking of how can we compete globally and not just looking or becoming local champions in Nigeria. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Sule, you've talked about funding for the universities. Our governments need to, fund the universities more. They should be better funded. That cannot be overemphasized. Right now, we're still struggling between 5% to 7%. And for a developing nation, it is absolutely not enough. They need more funding. But let's take a critical look at it from another angle right now. Let's look at the synergy between the universities and industries. What's the relationship? In Nigeria, there seems to be a disconnect, a total disconnect between the industries and the universities. How do I mean? You mentioned it. People who graduate from universities and they are not fit for employment in those industries. So we need to take a closer look at our curriculum. And apart from curriculum, Mr. Sule, still talking about the synergy between industries and universities, if you go to other countries, okay, the likes of Stanford University in the USA, okay, are being funded seriously by industries and private individuals. So what can we do to raise funding and, encourage, improve the synergy between the industries and Nigerian universities? We have to tinker with the curriculum. We have to talk about the partnership between them such that graduates of these universities are suitable to work in those industries when they graduate. So what are those things we can do to improve that synergy? Because it seems there's a clear disconnect between the industries in Nigeria and the universities producing the graduates.
I think the first thing Nigerian universities can do is to first reorientate the idea. And I say this with all care and responsibility. I'm not trying to throw shit at anyone. I hold Nigerian universities in high esteem. The leadership of Nigerian universities need to put on that thinking cap. Take your mind away from just increasing tuition fees and all of that. They need to see how they can explore partnership with industries. I recall when I was studying in Nigeria, we had some banks who had buildings, who sponsored buildings and scholarship in schools. I don't know if those are still existing. And I understand that many years when people were graduating from schools, you have banks, you have all these tech companies, oil companies coming during graduation to hire those who have done well. I don't know when those eroded from our culture, but I think we need to go back to the drawing board to see how we can collaborate with these companies. Universities also need to have incentives for companies so that they can offer CSR, corporate social responsibility. No company will put money anywhere if they are not going to be assured of, getting something solid from it. So our universities must continue to think outside of the box. And, this is why I've always been a fan of, let us not just have somebody who has a PhD or who has this. We need core educationists to lead universities in Nigeria. And, I'm a big fan of saying the right thing must be done at the right time. One critical example in which I'll make is this. Most of our universities now have businesses departments, maybe School of Business or Department of Business. Let us see how finance students can actually put up a proposal, approach a bank, approach an organization. Can you allow us do internships here? Can you allow us do this? What makes the MIT, the Harvards of this world bigger is because when students are enrolled in these universities abroad, for their final exams, many of them don't write exams. They are given a term paper. What is that term paper? They identify an hypothetical case of a university partnering with an organization. These are the challenges we are faced with. The students themselves will write the paper, identify who they want to work with, and go to those organizations and say, hey, we have a case study. We want to work with you. Those institutions open resources for them. They explore partnership and they help students get these experiences in which they need. And, the interesting part about this thing is there's a retention policy from these organizations, because when you have somebody who's gone through MIT or Harvard, who has done internship with probably Google or maybe Meta, Facebook, or which other company you can think of, by the time this student graduates from that university and sees an open role in those universities, in those organizations, I beg your pardon, those organizations have a little bit of confidence in saying, hey, this candidate had worked with us as an intern. While this person was an intern, this was what this person did. And this is how those people become full-time employee of those organizations, and it builds a ripple effect. I have had the privilege of doing that. When I was doing my master's program here in the US, I was privileged to intern with one of the foremost top nonprofits in America. When I graduated from my master's program, I was able to get a full-time role in that organization, not because I did anything that was fantastic, but because during my internship, I was able to get the skills that they need. That is the thing in which we are lacking in Nigeria. Nigerian graduates cannot even find places to do internships. You see somebody who studied, let's say, mathematics is being posted to a gas station for internship, whereas somebody who studied law is probably like these things breaks my heart. So until we pay attention to how places and universities are being run, we will continue to have these conversations and we will not make progress. And I hope the leadership of Nigerian universities are listening. We need to move away from just fees, ASU strikes, demanding for what professors want and not being concerned about our students. Our universities must now become student-oriented and research-driven. Enough of these old ASU strikes today, where some persons are fighting because this person is the vice chancellor. This person belongs to a political party that has become vice chancellor. We're done with that. This is 2025, and I think if universities are focused on the core mandate of becoming the learning hub of innovation, I think we'd have a great future in our hand. The Harvard that you see today, the top universities that you see around the world today, it's not because of the names, but it's because of the depth and the funding they've received and research in which people like you and I that have blood in our veins have been able to put into those universities. And I think Nigerian universities, we owe ourselves that duty to ensure that we stop politicking, we stop playing politics with our education curriculum, we put our feet where we should be and rebuild our universities. If we do that, I bet you the challenges facing Nigeria would be addressed drastically if our universities are headed to the right direction.
All right. For me, I think the last one for me for this morning will be, I was just looking through the funding and budget of some of these Ivy League towers that we had on our screen, and we're talking about. Some of them are heavily supported by maybe alumni, the government, the private sector, and in Nigeria as well. I must say, many of those institutions, even secondary school, are being rescued today just because of the alumni. Many schools will have, ceased to exist, if not because of the interventions of the alumni, which is, more of a way of contributing back to their alma mater. Now, it's a public document that in 2024, Harvard University, on operations alone, they spent $6.4 billion. That's a school, just a school, $6.4 billion in 2024. Up from $500 million from the prior year. 9% salaries and wages rose to $2.6 billion. So we are talking about billions of dollars here. And when you check that, what does this correlate in naira? You're talking about 9.7 trillion naira by a school, in 2024. Now, I'm not sure the total budget of Nigeria's education system amounts to 9 trillion naira. This is because the whole budget for this year is even around 48 trillion naira. So how can education alone get 7.9 something trillion? 9.7 trillion. These are the issues. The impact of the private sector and our reward for excellence. I'm sure possibly you're aware that when you see some convocation ceremonies and the kind of awards being given to the overall best students.
You're saying sums of 5,000, 10,000 naira.
In Unizi, was it recently? Not just the departmental, not just faculty, the overall best for that graduating set was being awarded 50,000 naira. 50,000. That's somebody that has been getting A from start to finish. And in fact, that money wasn't even given. It took one Alex Onye or something, the guy, the educare guy, to organize something for the guy and, getting the guy some kind of funding to continue with his education. That's kind of society that doesn't even reward hard work. And I remember we had Professor Tuji Oguyemi on this program months ago who said that the issue is because of the laws establishing these universities, that those monies are pegged. They are pegged at a part. So imagine OAU that has been created since 19 goes no when, or ABU Zaria, or the Premier University, you are in Ibadan. So some of those laws have been since that time. So that was the money voted for such award then, and it has not been repealed. And these are some of the things that we see. So what do we do so that education, we will stop having something like education is a scam? Obviously, it is not. It will never be. But so that when students go there and they know that they are not just working to be better people, they are appreciated when they leave. Because you talked about the private sector. How do we connect those dots?
The first thing we need to do is funding. We cannot overestimate the role of funding for our universities. You know, when you were giving the statistics of how much Harvard is being funded with, I was like, Femi doesn't like, you know,
don't go there.
It is very, it is very laughable. Let me give you a little bit of statistics. In 2024, and you can fact check me, a total of 15 top universities in Nigeria, the estimated appropriation they received was about 327 billion naira for 15 top universities. And if you do the breakdown of these universities, UNN was top on that chart. It had about 36.6 billion, followed by University of Calabar, 29.5 billion, and then Abu Zaria with 29.2 billion naira. That's for those universities. Now, if you come to 2025, the approximately like funding allocated for top 20 universities in Nigeria stood at 500 billion naira. Now, I would say that the only way in which we can make Nigerian universities attractive is to ask private sectors to come to the aid of the government. And if you look at the statistics of Nigerian universities nowadays, you would see the reason why I made the statement that saying that private universities or private
paper up and down. In fact, I'm not moved by any degree, any whatsoever, because they are just everywhere.
By the National Assembly.
Oh, all right.
Are you with us now, Jacob?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we lost the connection for a bit, but we'll like you to land on your thought as we close the program.
Yeah, I was just saying that we cannot overemphasize the place of funding for our universities in Nigeria, regardless of whoever we're talking about, regardless of whatever you stand on the table, we must judiciously fund our universities. And I'll close with this thought and charge to everyone who is listening. Rankings are not everything, quite frankly, but they matter. How do they matter? Because they shape the global perception of our universities. It shapes student choices, and it even helps us to draw investment into our universities. So if Nigeria wants to compete holistically along other universities around the world, our universities must be seen and heard. And how can our universities be seen and heard? They must be funded. There must be a stable academic calendar. And then our professors must spend time on doing research and publishing in high-impact journals. Femi, I bet you if we do all of this, our universities would become globally recognized, and our students themselves would have the required skills to be proud of the education in which they've gotten. Absolutely. But let me close with this. I encourage every Nigerian student who wants to seek opportunity abroad, do that unapologetically. Travel abroad, jackpot if you want to. But when you come abroad, make sure that whatever skills you have gotten, you find a way to contribute back to your country and to your university at large. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Sule, just before you leave, I'd like you to quickly address this critical one. You've talked about the universities over there, how they're doing better. Again, Nigerians are known to be one of the best educated. Even in the US, they're one of the most educated groups of people are Nigerians. Okay, so Nigerians have this passion for education. So coming back to Nigeria, we have a lot of Nigerians with degrees, several degrees, multiple degrees, master's degree and all that, but it's not translating to development of the nation, of the economy. So what exactly is the problem? Is it a culture thing? Is it a mindset thing? Are we just concerned about the paper qualifications, but the content is not there? So how do you correlate that? We have a lot of Nigerians with several degrees, but most times these are just paper qualifications. There's quite a disconnect. So are Nigerians more concerned about getting the paper certificate than the content?
Daniel, the average Nigerian is very inquisitive. And the truth is, even when you come abroad, Nigerians are ranked as one of the highly educated immigrants across the globe.
Absolutely.
But the fact, like you said, is the Asians are coming to the US. They are strategically placed. They don't spend much time in schools like we do. They probably might go to get an MBA or even get a certification. And in 2 years, they are commanding billions of dollars, while Nigerians are still in school trying to change to become a doctor or become a professor. So I think we need to re-engineer our thought process and see how we can translate all those certification into real impact. I mean, I can't tell anybody not to seek quality education, but while you're doing this, we must be strategic. And the only way, and lastly, I think the Nigerian environment is built in such a way that you want to compete adequately. But while we're putting so much effort in competing and acquiring all of these certificates, we are not seeing the impact on this in our country. And if I sit here and tell you that I know the way forward, I don't know. But maybe when you get somebody like Dr. Joe Abba, who is an Ezemo, who knows everything, he might be able to tell us why we have so many PhD holders, so many certifications in Nigeria, and the country isn't moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Jacob Sule, the lead consultant of iRead to Live initiative and also a legal practitioner. Thank you for joining us on the show this morning. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And this is where we sign out. You're totally out of time. It's been a pleasure having you, distinguished viewers all over the world. Join us from Monday to Friday. Thank you. It's been a wonderful week.
Absolutely.
Emeka Daniel, it's my name. Don't forget, you can always check out this conversation on our social media platforms at Western Spring Television. And this is where I say, do have a fantastic weekend.
All right, and fantastic weekend we shall have.
Absolutely.
All right, and please stay alive while you're trying to jiggy, rest down, party, go and bed, read, sleep, whatever you choose to do. Please stay alive. It's very important. All right, and of course, we sign out right now. Femi Ojo is my name. It's been an absolute pleasure with my dear brother Dan here. And we'll say join your weekend. But there we want to pay a tribute to these, especially the Nigerian legend, Peter Rufai Dodo Mayana, 61 years of age. He has passed on, and of course, a very promising football global star, Diego Jota, who died, and passed on as well. Our thoughts and prayers are with them, and this is an opportunity for you to relive, and have a sense of what they did. God bless Nigeria. Bye.